Krishna. Does everybody know everybody? You're all part of one big happy Bhakti Vriksha group? Or several? Several. Okay. So you don't know, everybody doesn't know everybody. Kind of. Is there anybody here who's very new to Krishna consciousness? Very new to Krishna consciousness? Okay. I'll ask a tougher question. How many of you, and you're going to ask two tough questions, how many of you have Srimad Bhagavatam in your home? Okay, that's a lot of hands. Now, how many have read the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam? Honest, be honest. Okay. Good. We're going to be discussing from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's okay if you go ahead from the 1st canto to the 7th canto. Just a little sharing. When I first became a devotee, the summer of 1970, a few years ago, Srila Prabhupada at that time was publishing chapter by chapter in paper-bound version, Canto 2. And it was really exciting. First step in God realization. Wow. And so forth. And it was meant for the devotees. Prabhupada just made it very clear. It's meant for the devotees and also for distribution. Largely we were involved in distribution, to be very honest, and not so much reading so carefully ourselves. We were very enthusiastic for distribution. And then time passed and he worked on other things. In addition to the 2nd canto, he published Krishna book. And it was a real challenge to distribute Krishna book because the audience, we were new, kind of, and the audience was all Western people. We didn't have the non-resident Indian diaspora here. It was just the Western audience. And you have this big book that says, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we were supposed, in a hardcover, we were supposed to distribute volumes, cases and cases and cases. We thought it was like mission impossible. But we did it. It wasn't impossible, it was blissful. And then Prabhupada went back to Srimad Bhagavatam. So we started distributing, Canto 2, Part 1. Canto 2, Part 2. Then it was in 2 parts. And Canto 3, Part 1. And Canto 3, Part 2. And so we're going out to meet the public, and we show them Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Part 3. And they go, what happened to, Part 1 and 2, and what about the earlier cantos? You know what we would say? We would say, our spiritual master said that when you lick on when you lick on ice cream, it doesn't matter whether you lick on this side or that side, it's all very sweet. I just went on like they didn't even ask the question. So then this was for the public, not for nice, pious families like you all here. Because the sound vibration is transcendental, and anyone who contacts transcendental sound vibration, auspiciousness awakens in their life. It's just by that contact. But the message of Srimad Bhagavatam is meant by the compiler, Srila Vyasadeva, to be read sequentially, starting with Canto 1. then Canto 2 and so forth. However, no harm if we go ahead to Canto 7, and especially the section that I began on Monday and Tuesday evening discussing. It's a very wonderful section. Prayers and teachings of Prahlad. The teachings part was what he said to his classmates, and the prayers part is what he said to Lord Nrsingadev. So according to audience, his voice was a little different, but the message wasn't at all different. The message is a transcendental message. And one of the specially special things about Prahlad and his prayers, he says in his prayers, he reveals that he was sent by the Lord of Vaikuntha to come here. He's a Nityasiddha personality who's in this world as if one of us, but not one of us. So what he's speaking is pure nectar. It's pure transcendental nectar. At the same time, you say, but he's speaking like he's one of us. He's speaking as a pure soul will speak. He's speaking in the mood of an embarrassingly humble position. He's so humble it makes you humble. Just to hear how he speaks. But that humility, and that's how his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev begin. Just doing here a little review of the prayers to get up to where we are. I'm going to speak on 3 prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. It begins with humility, and then that humility prevails throughout. It doesn't begin with humility, he loses it. He stays with it because it's his nature. And another very wonderful feature of Prahlad's devotion is he achieved perfection. There's 9 processes of bhakti. It begins with hearing and chanting and remembering. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. 9 processes of bhakti. Prahlad was perfect in one of those 9 processes of bhakti. And it's a very important process of bhakti. It's something that all bhaktas are told to do, to always remember Krishna, Manmana. Prahlad's perfection was he was always thinking of the Supreme Lord. He wasn't just in a state of meditation, neutral. He was doing things, but his mind was always upon the Supreme Lord, whether it was joyful or dangerous. And he had lots of situations where it was dangerous, but his mind didn't go from the Supreme Lord. Nor when it was joyful did his mind go. He just was fixed in remembrance of the Supreme Lord. And that's because he was attached. What you're attached to is where your mind goes. Without giving examples. What you're attached to is where your mind goes. Exactly what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever the mind is fixed on, at the time of death, that state you will attain without fail. Someone knows that verse from Bhagavad Gita? Antakali chamam. Very good. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavav chachantante kalevaram. Another one. Whatever your mind is fixed on, that's where you go. It's not only at the time of death, it's now. Here we are. Because the mind's fixed on, hey, let's go to the program. So here we are. The mind is like a yantra, a machine. In fact, the whole of material nature, prakriti, is like a machine on which the soul is being carried. Just like we got in the car and we just sat there. 60 miles an hour we were moving. But we were just sitting there because the yantra, the machine, was moving at 60 miles an hour. So when the mind goes, the soul goes with the mind. Yes? And so we're going to hear Prahlad speaking about transcendence, about attaining the abode of Krishna. Because that's what he wants. Or Lord Vishnu. He's a Vishnu Bhakta. The Sringa Bhakta, Lord Vishnu. He wants to attain the shelter of Lord Vishnu in his humility. Even he is already there, he's feeling, I'm not there. And I want to be there. I want to be always at your lotus feet, because that's the place of where mercy will come. And I don't want this other thing. He speaks just in the previous verses. Don't offer me, please. I know you want to give me some benediction before Lord even speaks. I know that you want to give me some benediction. The answer is no. No, thank you. Because the things that people generally want for benedictions, they're temporal. He speaks of the example of his father. He had everything. Some people want to attain the heavenly planet. And those who are presiding in the heavenly planets, how powerful are those persons? But those persons, simply by the raise of my father's eyebrow, they would tremble. And everything that they had, he took like that. But everything that he had was taken like that by you. So, having experienced all those of serving, of course, serving is another kind of enjoying, a transcendental enjoying. So, attachment and detachment. This message is there in Bhagavad Gita. No surprise. Because the Bhagavatam is the graduate study of the undergraduate study. The undergraduate study is Bhagavad Gita, and the graduate study is Bhagavatam. So in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about detachment. He says it very clearly. What is called detachment is actually yoga. Because you can't be detached without being attached. In connection with the Supreme, then you can be detached. And conversely, if you don't have that connection with the Supreme, there's no question of detachment. This idea of renunciation is false. For those that aren't attached to the Supreme, it's false. It's born of frustration, but it's not sustainable. Knowledge of the temporary nature of things, or knowledge of the misery-producing nature of things when you get attached, is not sufficient. In Vedic text, this couplet, Jnana Vairagya, appears again and again, especially in the Shruti mantras. Jnana Vairagya, like two peas in the same pod. Not even dominoes, it's just, they're practically synonymous. Where there's jnana, there's vairagya. Because what does that jnana teaches? It teaches you that there's no shelter in that which is temporary. It's like there's no substance in a mirror. There's no water in a desert. It may look like water, but by definition, a desert is where there's no water. There's no water in a desert. And in a reflection, here's a mirror, here's a nice plate of prasadam. Go ahead. Have a feast. There's no substance in that reflection in the mirror. In fact, just turn the angle of the mirror slightly, and there's no reflection at all. Even the reflection went away. It's all very circumstantial and insubstantial. Those that have knowledge of such things, there's detachment. But still the tendency to want to enjoy is so strong, and so unless there's an actual shelter-taking position of enjoyment, you go back to the reflection, or to the mirage, or pursuing happiness where there's no happiness, where it's all temporary. Whatever it is that you have, poof. Prahlad in his prayers is saying these things. And the context is, he knows Hiranyakashipu is, he knows that Lord Nrsingadev is capable of giving him benediction, and he's saying no before he even asks. Then I'm going to read the 3 verses. I'll just paraphrase them, and then I'll read what Prahlad says. In the first of the 3 verses, he compares Lord Vishnu, or in this case Lord Nrsingadev, to a desire tree. Like a desire tree, the desire tree is neutral. Someone comes to the desire tree that says, I want this. It's to say fruit. I want an apple. Another one says, I want a peach. Another one says, I want a banana. Another one says, I want grapes and an orange. The desire tree can supply all those things. Neutral. Like the desire tree is neutral and is reciprocating simply with the desire of whoever approaches the desire tree, you are neutral. You killed my father and you rescued me simultaneously, and this was a benediction and that was a benediction, and that's your neutrality. To someone it looks like you are favored to me and you are against my father. But that's a misunderstanding. It has to do with the attitude of the person that's approaching. According as we take shelter, as we take shelter, that's what we're going to receive. So, that's the first prayer. You're neutral. The next prayer is, from my side, this detachment. I don't want all these things. So I'm not coming to the desire tree. I'm not wanting these things. I know that you want me to take something. I don't want these things. What I do want is shelter of your lotus feet, and shelter of your lotus feet is made possible through association of your devotees. Please give me the association of Narada, because he'll train me nicely how to serve your lotus feet. In fact, having received from Narada, how can I leave Narada? You follow? That those persons who you receive transcendental treasure from, never leave the shelter of those persons while you enjoy the bounty of the association of Krishna. You don't worship Krishna directly or independently. You worship Krishna in relation to Krishna's devotees. And through Krishna's devotees you get Krishna. There's no question of abandoning. That's what he says. How could I leave Narada? In other words, so supposing Nrsingadev wanted him to have something. He gets something, a kingdom. How can I leave Narada's association? If I take that position, it's in service to Narada only. And if I don't have that position, that's just fine. It's Narada's service only. Whatever it is, it's Narada's service, because he's going to guide me how to serve you. That's how I got your association, by his mercy. How could I leave his mercy? No way. No way. What's that?
There's a lag, Maharaj.
That's this class being played upstairs in the lag.
Oh,
Yes? Okay. Okay. So I'll just read. If you have your little handheld device, you might want to look it up. Canto 7, Chapter 9, texts 27, 28, and 29. So translation of 27. Unlike an ordinary living entity, my Lord, you do not discriminate between friends and enemies, the favorable and the unfavorable, because for you there is no conception of higher and lower. Nonetheless, you offer your benedictions according to the level of one's service, exactly as a desire tree delivers fruits according to one's desires and makes no distinction between the lower and the higher. So there's the comparison, the desire tree. And the Lord is just reciprocating with those who take shelter of Him. The language that I like, especially the language that Prabhupada uses in the purport, he says it twice, slightly different, but it's the same message. According to the service the living entity renders, he automatically receives benediction from Krishna, who does not make distinctions, thinking, quote, here is a person in an intimate relationship with me, and here is a person I like, unquote. Name dvesho stina priyaha. Then again, he says the same thing. Here is a person favorable to me, and here is a person who is not favorable. No. Krishna is equal. Samaham sarva bhuteshu. Name dvesho stina priyaha. He's equal to everyone. The context is, Prahlad is anticipating Lord Sringadeva is going to ask him to take a benediction. He's saying, you're neutral. So the asking me to take the benediction depends upon my expectation for happiness. Then the next verse is, my expectation for happiness is not in temporary things. That's detachment. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires, one after another, I was gradually falling into a blind well, full of snakes, following the general populace. But your servant Narada Muni kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? Not Lord Sringadeva is asking Prahlad to leave Narada's service. He's not contradicting the Lord's desire. He's stating his own desire. I have this attachment. It's not possible to leave this attachment. No, so where attachment goes, that's where your thoughts go. Your thoughts go where your attachments are. And then you go where your mind goes. So what you're attached to, what's important to you? You know, like that often unasked question. What's the goal of life? You know, you ask a young person, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, get some very interesting answers. Amrit, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Lawyer.
A lawyer. An airplane pilot. Lots of young people say they want to be an airplane pilot. Doctor. Any one of you boys want to be a doctor? Huh? IT, or you know, what is it? IT? IT, okay. So where the mind, with that goal tells you where the mind is, and when the mind is where the soul gets carried, the machine again. Prahlad, the purport explains, Prahlad understands the good fortune of standing before the personality of Godhead is not because I've got some material qualification or some spiritual qualification. It's, I've got mercy. And the person that is the bestower of that mercy is Narada. How could I forget Narada? Now, whatever it is that comes next after achieving this darshan of Lord Nrsingadev, being at his feet, what comes next? I don't want what comes next. I just want Narada, please. And that gift which Narada wants to give, which is devotional service, and strengthened and enhanced devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So, whether a lawyer or an IT or an airplane pilot, do that for Krishna. And all the little steps to get there. And then once you're there, it's, be in that relationship with Krishna, in service to Krishna, doing that particular function, duty. As he's saying, my first duty, directly, my first duty is to serve Narada. That's the priority. The first things first priority is the spiritual well-being. And then the material well-being will follow. The material well-being, like a shadow, follows the object that casts shadow. Okay, here's the mirror. And here's the apple. And as the apple moves, the reflection in the mirror moves. From the object that casts a shadow, the shadow moves. So if I want material well-being, I should see first to my spiritual well-being, because then material well-being will follow the spiritual well-being. And the converse is also. Thus it's just this temporary image that now you see it, now you don't kind of a thing. The third, my Lord, O unlimited reservoir of transcendental qualities, you have killed my father, Hiranyakashipu, and saved me from his sword. He had said very angrily, quote, if there is any supreme controller other than me, let him save you. I shall now sever your head from your body. That's his dad. Therefore, I think that both in saving me and in killing him, you have acted just to prove the words of your devotee, there's no other cause. To prove the words of your devotee, there is no other cause. So what's the word of your devotee? Krishna is upholding his word also, but the word of his devotee. Brahma gave his word to Hiranyakashipu. You can't be killed this way, that way, the other way. So he upheld Brahma's word. He took a form that was neither this nor that. And he appeared whether it was neither day or night. He appeared whether it was neither inside or outside. And he outsmarted clever Hiranyakashipu. He upheld the word of Lord Brahma. But the demigods, they also had prayed to the Supreme Lord to appear and give protection. So he appeared and gave protection against this wicked Hiranyakashipu to uphold the words of his devotees. And one who does like that, it's because of what's being expressed here. It's his quality of Bhakta Vatsala. Let me read. Very nice. The killing of Hiranyakashipu and saving of Prahlad Maharaj strictly followed this law of the Supreme Controller's activities. That is, he's neither favorable to one or ill-disposed to the other. When Prahlad's mother, Hiranyakashipu's wife Kayadu, was under the protection of Narada, she prayed for the protection of her son from the enemy. And Narada gave assurance that Prahlad Maharaj would always be saved from the enemy's hand. Ha! Just turned out the enemy was his dad. But Lord Nrsimhadev upheld the word of Narada. Thus, when Hiranyakashipu was going to kill Prahlad, the Lord saved Prahlad to fulfill his promise in Bhagavad Gita, Konteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashati, and to prove true the words of Narada. The Lord can fulfill many purposes through one action. Thus the killing of Hiranyakashipu and the saving of Prahlad were enacted simultaneously to prove the truthfulness of the Lord's devotee and the fidelity of the Lord himself to his own purpose. The Lord acts only to satisfy the desires of his devotees. Semicolon. Otherwise, he has nothing to do. He says that in Bhagavad Gita, I have nothing to do. But he does. And why? He's fulfilling the words of his devotees. Natasya karyam karanam chavidyate, Vedic text. The Lord has nothing to do personally, for everything is done through his different potencies. Parasha Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate. Prabhupada quoted that so many times. It's from the Upanishads. Natasya karyam karanam chavidyate. The Lord has multifarious energies through which everything is done. Thus, when he personally does something, it is only to satisfy his devotee. The Lord is known as Bhaktavatsala because he very much favors his devoted servant. Interesting, 2 verses earlier, he isn't partial to anybody. Now he's partial. But it's not he's partial. It's he's reciprocating with the affection of his devotee. He's reciprocating, here's how Prabhupada explains it. Hiranyakashipu saw the Lord as his enemy. So the Lord said, "Oh, you wish me to be your enemy? Very well. I'll be your enemy." And Prahlad said, "I wish you to be my Lord." "Oh, you wish me to be your Lord? Very well, I'll be your Lord, your Master." He's simply reciprocating. Prapadyante, yayatam mam prapadyante, tangs tadaiva bhajamyaham. It's interesting that bhajami, as they bhajami, as they worship Krishna, as they have regard for Krishna, Krishna reciprocates how someone regards him. He's the desire tree. He appears to be partial to his devotee, Bhaktavatsala. That's one of his outstanding qualities, if not the outstanding quality of the Lord, Bhaktavatsala. He's very kind to his devotee. But it's just reciprocation with what's in the heart of the devotee. So there's another nice sentence here, but I'll find it. Proportionate to, or in keeping with how we have regard for the Supreme Lord, that's how he reciprocates with us. It's in our hand, whether we go back to Godhead or we loiter here for a while. It's in our hand. And we're mixed devotees, so generally we have one foot in this boat and the other foot in that boat. We're trying to cross the river. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. One of Lord Chaitanya's very intimate associates was named Jagatananda Pandit. Jagatananda Pandit was a very puzzling personality, very enigmatic character. He would insult Lord Chaitanya. He would pout. He would go. He would throw things. No one could understand him. That all of what he did was out of love for Lord Chaitanya. There's another class about Jagatananda Pandit. Very, very special. But he wrote a book called Prema Vivarta. And in the book, in the very beginning of the book, is I don't even care if the reader doesn't understand this. I'm just disclosing my heart. That's what I'm doing. And then he would say, critical things of Lord Chaitanya. Then he would say how much I love him. Then he would retell, some exchanges that he had with Lord Chaitanya. He said like this and did like that. And it's like the contrarian. It's like, Satyabhama. She would do things that would challenge or defy Krishna's authority in Dwarka. And Krishna liked it. Because he knew she was doing it out of love. If someone was just a contrarian, forget it, smash. But it was she had a particular kind of, so Jagatananda had such a kind of love. Very, very amazing personality. Very amazing relationship. And one of the things he writes in this Prema Vivarta means hidden love in his heart. Then he shows it. But people can't understand it, so it's still hidden. Prema Vivarta. So he makes this statement. I put it on my wall in my office in New York. Something like this. Don't make the mistake. Jagatananda, he writes, Jagatananda advises, don't make the mistake of trying to cross a river, putting one foot in two different boats. Similarly, when you practice bhakti, put both feet in the boat of bhakti. Not this mixed thing. Jagatananda advises. You'll end up in the river, trying to cross the river in two different boats, or you'll rip open your legs or something. Here's the sentence. One's relationship with the Supreme Lord is in proportion to that surrender and the service one renders unto the Lord. But we're determining what that he's simply reciprocating with us. If we're struggling, it's because of the mind. We got 1 foot in two different boats, or 2 feet in two different boats. Prahlad is very singularly focused. Therefore, he is constantly remembering the Supreme Lord. He simply wants his association. He's attached. He knows how he can get that association. Through association with Narada, he'll get that association. It's how he got that association. It's how he can go further in that relationship. He just wants that. Never do I want to leave the Lord. Never do I want to leave the Lord's devotee. How is it possible? So don't ask me. Don't ask me for these other things. It's similar in Dhruva. These two, I mentioned this the other day. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I'll just end with this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go every day when he was living in Puri. Every day to Jagannath, receive prasad of Jagannath, darshan and prasad. He took the prasad to the place of Haridas Thakur, Siddha Bakul, the place of Haridas Thakur. Give him Jagannath prasad and spend time associating with Haridas Thakur. And then next he would go to Gadadhar Pandit's place where the Tota Gopinath deity was worshipped. He would dance before Tota Gopinath, and then he would sit and hear Gadadhar Pandit recite Srimad Bhagavatam. Now Gadadhar Pandit was a fabulous reciter of Srimad Bhagavatam. And those who heard from him, there's Ananta Acharya, then Haridas Pandit, from whom Krishnadas Kaviraj received the blessings to write Chaitanya Charitamrita. In other words, there's a whole long description of the super excellence of Gadadhar Pandit's recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. That was his thing, along with the worship of the deity of Gopinath, all for the pleasure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to hear, Krishnadas Kaviraj writes, he would hear the pastimes of Prahlad and Dhruva, just like we're hearing. And when they were completed, Mahaprabhu would say it again, say it again. Because hearing it nourishes pure devotion. And when one is feeling pure devotion towards the Supreme Lord, one wants to hear it again, and hear it again. It's not something you get tired of, like something material, like chewing bubblegum after it's already been chewed. You know, the Indian example is, the Vedic example is chewing sugarcane after the juice is removed. You know, they run the thing through the sugarcane through the grinder so many times and it spits it out on the other, and somebody comes along and chews that end. Dry. Who's going to do that? But people do that if they again and again go for material happiness. But spiritual happiness is, the juice doesn't get squeezed out. Rather, the very nature of it is, as you say it again and say it again, the juiciness, the nectar flows further. The Bhagavatam is meant, just like the Maha Mantra, meant to be recited again and again. By reciting it again and again, the nectar increases. It's meant to be done like that. So these passages about Prahlad's prayers, we can hear them again and again, and it increases the mood of shelter-taking and unalloyed love to the personality of Godhead. Although it's from the mouth of a 5-6-year-old boy, no problem. Because he's received the benediction in one of his verses, something that even Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even the goddess of fortune never had. He placed his hand on Prahlad's head and thus benedicted him to speak these eloquent verses. But it just meant the devotion that was within was able to come out. And he's feeling such happiness means that the Supreme Lord is feeling happiness at his words. But the ability to speak his words came from the Supreme Lord, yet the Supreme Lord is feeling happiness. This is the nature of Bhakta Vatsala and the Bhakta. It's an exchange of love. It's so inviting. And one who has that shelter is disinterested in other things. That's the detachment factor. Please don't ask me to have these other things, please. No. I only want this one thing. Narada, you. He gets a kingdom. He rules the kingdom for a long, just like Dhruva did. 60,000 years, a long time to do anything. But his happiness was in service to the Supreme Lord. And that hearing the Bhagavatam helps us develop or awaken that consciousness, dormant consciousness. So nice prayers. So those of you that have the Bhagavatam in your home, please read it again and again. And discuss it in the association of devotees again and again. And those that you have one, but you haven't started reading it yet, start reading it. And those of you that don't have one, get one. Invite Krishna into your home, and then from your home into your heart, and be happy. Okay, we'll stop there. See if there's any discussion. Yeah?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for I have a question. You were mentioning how Krishna is neutral towards all living entities. question is, so does it take away the fact that Krishna has an innate desire to see the living entities back? So, because, or is it a part of the internal energy of Krishna who thinks like that, and Krishna by himself is neutral?
By saying he's neutral means he's not partial for this one and against that one, friend and enemy. So wanting all living entities to come back to him is not partial. There's some that don't want and some that do want, and he's impartial to those that do want and don't want, while at the same time he's wishing them all to come back to him. It doesn't compromise his neutrality. Yes?
Maharaj, where do we know about later part of Prahlad Maharaja? So we know the Prahlad Maharaja's initial childhood story. But I was curious to know where we can read or learn more about that 60,000 years or after that.
That's true of the 60,000 years. But in Vishnu Purana there is more, but there's in the Bhagavad, the main part that we hear, the number of verses particularly, is about his, up till Hiranyakashipu was killed and his exchange with Lord Nrsingadev. That's the bulk of the text. But there's some description afterwards also in the Bhagavatam, and there's further description in Vishnu Purana that's narrated by Parashara Muni. Okay. Anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to get my facts right because when you spoke in Lansing also, you mentioned, we learned that Nrsingadev appeared to remove the fear, right? And
Nrsingadev says that.
yes, right. So, and now also as you spoke today, there are many reasons, Krishna can do one thing and accomplish many things by the same thing.
Exactly.
So whenever I've told this story, Lord Nrsingadev's pastime, I always made the point how Nrsingadev satisfies all those boons that Lord Brahma gives to Hiranyakashipu.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there's much more to it.
Mm-hmm.
All these things that remove the fear, and then Narad Muni's words are fulfilled, and Prahlad Maharaj, his words are also fulfilled that, yes, the Lord is in the pillar. So I wanted to get my facts right when I tell this story again. There's more to it than just fulfilling Lord Brahma's words.
Yeah. And fidelity to his own word. That's another also mentioned here.
Okay. The one about what I said, where Prahlad Maharaj points out that Hiranyakashipu says that, is your Lord in this pillar? And Prahlad Maharaj says, yes. Is that also the Lord satisfying the devotees or fulfilling the devotees' words?
Well,
I'm not sure.
yes, it's correct
Okay.
that he's fulfilling the Lord's, that his devotee's word. At the same time, it's true, whether he came out of the pillar or didn't come out of the pillar.
Yeah.
But he showed it to verify, to uphold the word. Yes, he's there. One of the messages embedded in this little section is, in addition to all those things that you just said, he was fulfilling many things by one thing. Very important is, he did so personally in reciprocation with the love of his devotee Prahlad. I mean, he was fulfilling the commitment to the demigods, I'll come. That's another. he was reciprocating with their desire and keeping his word. So that all those things. But the most important thing, because he can do in different ways the same thing, he came personally to be before Prahlad, to give his association to Prahlad, and that was the essence. And the other things are, secondary or detailed. He conformed according to all those other things, but the essence is his personal reciprocation with Prahlad, the devotee. Says this Bhaktavatsala feature. Yes.
This is somewhat of a personal question.
Okay.
Recently, I've started to worship Narsinghadev at our house because of certain advice giving, and so for me, it is becoming very overwhelming to worship the Lord.
It becoming overwhelming?
Yeah, I always had a fear to do deity worship. And now with Narsinghadev, it's becoming, every small detail is becoming more stressful. I really want to have I have a natural, I have a very, this thing to approach Jagannath, but when it comes to Narsinghadev, it's really overwhelming and there's a lot of anxiety. And I really want to develop a very loving and service and
So let me get it straight. It's not aversion to deity worship and nervous and feeling stressful about deity worship, because you have that positive feeling in approaching Lord Jagannath. Have I understood correctly? It's not deity worship per se, it's that particular form. You like deity worship per se.
I've overcome that part of fear of worshipping the deity.
Okay.
But this one is the next phase of where it's becoming very tough for me.
Well, we each have our different nature. Having said that, doing something out of a sense of somebody said it's good for you and you're feeling stressed out by it, I wonder about continuing. I wonder about even starting because someone said it's good for you, and so you do it and you're feeling stressed. You're feeling pressure or to do it and stress in doing it. Maybe go back to the person that asked you or suggested, can you do a little reset here? And so if there's clarity as to why, then there could be, a revisit to the impetus for doing it to begin with, and then on the basis of the impetus to do it to begin with, it should come from within. Is my point. So the person that you've heard from may be able to address something about why, or maybe there's an obstacle that's the why. Because my experience with those that worship Lord Nrsingadev in particular is they feel he's just so affectionate. He's as soft as a glove joint. And juicy. Very, very kind. Especially kind to his devotee. He is especially kind. And so there's an attachment, not an obligation. So I don't think doing deity worship because there's a sense of obligation is going to be good for you. I don't think Lord Nrsingadev wanted to be worshipped because people have a sense of obligation to worship him.
How can I develop that attachment?
Huh?
How can I develop that attachment?
Well, go back to the source of the person that said, this is the reason why, and hear it again. And then explain, but I'm having these feelings. And they may say, oh, in that case, maybe you should do something else. just recite prayers. And when you feel you can revisit the worship again, you feel that sense of connection and inspiration, or the resistance has subsided, because it's not deity worship per se. There's something that opens the heart, so that you take the activity, saying yes to the activity, not just because somebody said you should do the activity. It should come from your heart. I'll say it again, it's worth saying it again. Those that I know a number of devotees, they want to worship. They're very attached to Lord Nrsimhadev. They may worship others, in some cases they don't worship others. They're very attached to Lord Nrsimhadev. And they feel a softness, like super softness. It's not like an advertisement kind of, a super softness. And Lord Nrsimhadev's reciprocation with them. And that's their attachment to that worship. You're not feeling that. But don't force it out of obligation because somebody said. So your question is, how do I get over that? Take a step or two back and read his pastimes or offer prayers or something. Cultivate a sense of affinity or closeness based on some other process besides worship, like hearing, perhaps. Okay. Yes.
Guru Maharaj, you were saying about the attitude of a person when we approach the Lord.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was just looking, like when I started, my attitude was different, and now after little hearing and some service, my attitude is changing.
That's good.
So is that okay?
It's not only okay, it's good. And it's perfectly natural. And it'll continue changing. That's also good and perfectly natural. And it's not always, we're getting cleansed. So in the process of getting cleansed, sometimes it feels really comfortable and sometimes it may feel uncomfortable. That's okay. The principle is we're getting cleansed. So the feeling may be this and the feeling may be that. The attitude may be this, the attitude. So stay with it. And observe the change, as you say, the attitude or regard. Observe that and know that Krishna is observing that too. But the behind some particular feeling or mood or attitude, whatever that language is, behind that there's something deeper. Try to go to that something deeper as you're further progressing or going along the path of devotion. That is, whatever it is, the external circumstance, the mind, antakarana is Vishwanath Chakravarti calls the antakarana is the cause within. That's the subtle body. Material mind, material intelligence, and material ego. Antakarana. Whatever the configuration of that thing is, what's on the soul platform, what's stirring there? Try to access that. As you're hearing and these other things are changing and you're noticing, go deeper to the soul platform. That is the hankering for that connection. And let that be your focus. Going forward. Okay. Yes, last question.
This is something that comes up in our Bhakti Vriksha gatherings, new people asking this question, and my conception.
Can you hear in the back? No. A question that comes up in Bhakti Vriksha gatherings from time to time as new people start joining.
Yeah, and my conception also, I want to get it straight. How do we reconcile between all-knowing nature of Krishna and the free will of a living entity?
You heard the question? There's, on one hand, there's Krishna is all-knowing. On the other hand, we have free will. How do you reconcile the two? I don't see any problem at all. Here's a very simple thing. Somebody jumps out the window. And you all knowingly say they're going to fall and splat on the ground. No, that doesn't take away free will of the living entity. They made certain choices, they exercised a free will choice, they jumped out the window. You know, you can say laws of nature, but, you know, according to the exercise of free will, there's going to be an outcome. And if somebody knows what that outcome, it doesn't take away the free will. Now that's in the present. Then you can go in the past and go in the future. There's capacity we don't have, but capacity that Krishna has and Vyasadeva and others have, and they know the future before it happens. And how do they know the future? They know subtle laws. But it's like we heard yesterday evening about Durvasa Muni. He understood that Kunti, as a young girl, in the future was going to have trouble with conceiving children, so he gave her a mantra so she could conceive children through the access of this mantra. He knew it. Now he had that capacity. Didn't take away the free will of Kunti, that he knew that. She didn't. Anyway, a whole series of events happened in relation to that mantra that had impact on her life, but anyway. The law of karma is complex and subtle. And there are persons that have some understanding of that. By karma, there's certain things going to happen. So karma can change. That is to say, free will can overcome karma. But just like, somebody that, astrologer can look at the palm and say such and such. Or they can look at their chart and say such and such. Or both of them and compare them and say such and such. What that says is there's going to be such and such influence. Now how you're going to respond to that, that's a free will choice. But largely, especially when one is conditioned, that free will choices are dictated by material influences acting on us. And the distinction is when we access the free will choice of devotion to Krishna, surrender to Krishna, then all of that can change. That's a free will choice. So by subtle, so like the palmistry thing, Prabhupada was asked, do we go consult palmistry? Prabhupada said, you go to kirtan and you clap in kirtan, and after kirtan the lines in your hand have changed. Your destiny has changed because of the access to devotion. So we're interested in accessing devotion, and that's a free will choice for sure. Still, there's forces acting on us. The stars are what they are, and the lines in our hand are what they are, and the influencers are acting upon us. But we're going to choose, as we rise in bhakti, we're going to choose Krishna anyway. And so then outcomes change anyway.
So, is it like it comes in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Jayadra, Karma, they're already killed. He speaks to Arjuna, right?
Yes.
So
it could happen this way, it could happen that way, but it was already decided.
So when he's saying that they're already killed, that means their free will choice has already been made.
No.
That's the argument that
No,
comes
the outcome of that free will choice is already determined, but they're going to make, the making of the choice is a free will choice. Look, come on, we're all going to die. Does that mean I don't have free will because I'm going to die? I'm going to die. Has that taken away my free will? It's like that you're jumping out the window. You're going to die. And then another law is, depending upon what the mind is fixed upon, that state I will attain. So I can fix my mind upon Krishna and attain Krishna, or I can fix my mind upon this little girl making her noise over here and become absorbed in that. I can make, there's some free will choice involved. But the rule is, whatever the mind is fixed on, that I'm going to attain. Right? Doesn't take away free will. If somebody knows what's going to happen. You have something? No? Okay. You do?
Yeah.
You're our host, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The host gets to ask questions.
So, what is your favorite Nrsimhadev prayer?
My favorite?
Yeah, like if you suggest one, I got one from 5:18:8.
That's it.
10 days back.
It's 8 and 9.
8 and 9.
Yeah. Very special. I'm not sure which the number is, but there's one where there's two, one after the other. You have them in your little machine there?
Yeah, the 8 is Om Namo Bhagavate Nrsimhaya Namas.
What is the translation? How does it begin?
This one says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Nrsimhadeva, the source of all power, O my Lord, who possesses nails and teeth just like thunderbolts, kindly vanquish our demon-like desires for fruitive activity in this material world. Please appear in our hearts and drive away our ignorance, so that by your mercy we may become fearless in the struggle for existence in this material world.
Yeah. Then the other one is either before or after. It's a prayer for peace in the world. If you're ever called upon to give a public address and you're not sure what verse you should speak from, pick that one. There's been a number of Indian children that were valedictorian of their college class, and they asked me, what should I say? I told them that verse. Because it's universal. It's, appealing for giving benediction of peace. But it's from the transcendental position of taking shelter of the personality content. May there be peace in this world. So both, those two. You wanted one, but both two. 5th Canto, Chapter 18. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhupada. Look at this. So, this is one of the favorite parts of the evening. It's distributing gooey Mahaprasadam. And this is Mahaprasadam both from Radha Govinda and from the Detroit Temple. So they're kind of mixed up. You get what you get. Okay.
Just